I know a lot of people may not be thrilled about it, but I think Coach Cal's future in Lexington has pretty much been decided.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing Coach Cal's future in Lexington. I believe it has already been decided. We are also going to take a look at the expectations for Kentucky basketball if he is to return, as well as the 2024-25 roster tracker. A lot of pending updates to come in the next few weeks for Kentucky basketball and some of their departures. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and new customers, if you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. You can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms, and if you have not subscribed on YouTube, please go ahead and do so. If you are listening on podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Will Kentucky basketball let John Calipari go? I think at this point in the whatever you want to call it, this saga, this drama that we've been watching unfold here over the past few days, I think it's pretty clear now the direction that Kentucky basketball is going to take this. So as we all heard yesterday, Coach Cal appeared on his post-game radio show, Final One of the season, and he talked about all these different things that he wants to change heading into next season. He also had some really interesting comments about how Kentucky scouted the Oakland game, how they decided to do things, how they decided to operate overall towards the end of the season. Some confusing things, some really, I think, inaccurate things as well. But overall, I think it was a positive message that he sent. I think I've made my stance pretty clear here on the show. I feel like after the performance in the NCAA tournament, I feel like it is probably time for Kentucky to move on from Coach Cal. I think a lot of people would agree with that sentiment, especially in the Lexington area. I think a lot of people would agree that that's the conversation right now, and that's what everybody's talking about, and almost everybody agrees that it's probably time to go ahead and move on, considering the last half decade has featured essentially nothing for the Kentucky basketball team as far as at least fulfilling expectations by the fan base. And according to Cal, he's got a pretty high standard of himself as well, and he has not met his own criteria, not even close. So letting your coach go talking about letting your coach go after he appears on his end of season show is kind of weird, right? Because him actually going on the show indicates that he is going to come back. And that's kind of where I think everything starts and ends here today, is that Coach Cal was allowed to and was told it was okay to go on his post-game show for the final time this year, before he had an opportunity to meet with athletic director Mitch Barnhart. So as Cal stated in the post-game show, and as we all know, Mitch Barnhart is scheduled to meet with Coach Cal. Pretty sure he's scheduled to meet today, Tuesday, March 26, 2024, but that could happen, according to Cal, anytime before the end of the week. My assumption is that it is happening later this afternoon. Getting him on that post-game show, I think, is a strong indicator of where things are going, at least in terms of the administration's mind. My assumption here is that he is going to return. I think it is pretty clear at this point, considering we haven't seen Barnhart make specific moves and say specific things. Actually, he hasn't said anything at all. I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be some sort of serious conversation about change within the program, but at the very least, I think it has change to do with things outside of Coach Cal. I think that he will be returning, and I think that there will be some things changing around him. Having not spoken to him while also letting him come back is kind of weird, especially if you fire him. Just shows some misalignment, I think, within this athletic department. If tomorrow or later today news breaks Coach Cal is out, Barnhart and him had a conversation, and he is done, You let him do his post-game show, you let him do his thing, and then you bring him back in, and now you tell him you fire him. Just kind of a weird way to go about things. I don't think that that's what's going to happen here. I also think that the pressure surrounding the $34 million buyout, as well as identifying another coach that you can legitimately go and get, I think is too much for this athletic department, too much for Barnhart, too much for whatever search committee they want to put together. My guess is some of the candidates that they would potentially want to take a look at are still currently coaching in the NCAA tournament. And you cannot make a coaching change at Kentucky unless you are certified and you know definitively who you're going to go after next. And you pretty much need to have the guy almost under wraps already. The fact that Kentucky can't do that with, I think, some of the bigger candidates that they could at least take a look at is probably, the timeline does not align well with Kentucky basketball for them to make a coaching change today or this week. If they end up doing so, which again is what I would like to see happen, then we can have that conversation about, okay, what does the coaching timeline look like? What does the roster look like? How does the transfer portal go? Yada, yada, yada. We can dive all into that. But as for now, I don't think Calipari's leaving. I think he is going to stay with Kentucky basketball, especially after letting him on that end of the season show and everything that he had to say indicating that he's coming back, or at least he expects to return. We'll see how the conversation with Barnhart goes. We'll see if anything is publicly said. I'd be curious to see if they both do a press conference or do something later this week to let everybody know that it's okay. I want to ask you guys, what do you think in the comments below? Do you think that Kentucky basketball will be bringing Cal back? Do you think that he will be going? Do you want him to stay? Do you want him to leave? Those are two very separate conversations that we could have. Let me know in the comments below or hit me on the socials at LockedOnUK on Twitter. All right, so let's say Cal is coming back. If he does return, what does he need to do? What are the expectations that he and this team need to fulfill in order for him to stay in the job? Let's dive into that in just a little bit. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. You can say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every single game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it is time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That is $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. You can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Today's episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your #1 ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the show already, whether that be on podcast or on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you went ahead and did that. Seen a massive surge in subs recently. I'm really appreciative of everybody that has joined up. Please do me a favor. Leave your thoughts on this entire situation in the comments below. And if you're listening on podcast, at Locked On UK on Twitter is where you can find me. It's where you can get me. You can send me a DM. You can tag me in a tweet, and I will do my best to respond to it there if you want to share your opinion. So John Calipari, I don't believe that he's leaving for a variety of reasons that we just discussed. If he does end up returning, let's just go down that road for today's episode. If he is back, what does he need to do to fulfill expectations? I think we need for a second here to return to the conversation we had on yesterday's episode. So yesterday's episode, we talked about how Coach Cal had some interesting things about setting the standard on his post-game radio show. And he discussed his own standard. He said, I don't care about what anybody else has to say. I care about my personal standard. He cares about what he expects this team to do this season and how he expects them to perform. And he had a lot of different things to say about, what he wants to inflict as far as change goes, what he wants to do with the defense, how he wants to run his personnel, all these different things, and essentially said, we're still going for a national championship. So if that's the case, if that is his standard, it's an extremely high one. He broke down how important having a really good offense like this year is, but also having more physicality and having a better defense. If all of these different things come together, it sets a very high standard for the program. So I'm going to walk with it. I'm going to say, you know what? If that's the standard, that's what I'm going to preach here then to everybody that's listening. And I think a lot of you would agree, is if he's going to hold himself to that standard, then we should go ahead and follow that standard because we have extremely high expectations as well. So if he's back, what does he need to do? I think Second Take on Twitter talked a little bit about this, just some different bullet points. I'm going to run through just a variation of it because I agree with some of it. I think we need to take it to even more extremes on some other points. I think that he needs to contend for the SEC regular season title. I think that needs to happen first and foremost. Kentucky basketball cannot lay an egg. I think that therefore that means Kentucky gets a double bye in the SEC tournament, preferably the number 1 or the number 2 seed. It's been a hot minute since Kentucky has been able to do that, and they've not won in the SEC tournament in a very long time. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think that Kentucky basketball needs to contend for the SEC regular season title, be right there at the very end of the season. And on top of this, I think they need to make the SEC tournament title game. I'm sick and tired of seeing this team flame out in the SEC tournament when they have all of this talent and the ability to go far. If Coach Cal truly is wanting to talk his talk and expects these different things to change and for success to occur after it, then therefore I would expect them to make the SEC tournament title game. I think that Auburn's going to take a step back this year. I think that Alabama's going to take a step back this year as well. They're going to be younger. I think that Tennessee's losing a ton of different pieces. They're going to be younger as well. They're losing Dalton Connect on top of it, who is the machine. Tennessee could still win the national title, by the way, and that's a world I don't want to live in. I think that Arkansas is probably going to struggle again. I think that LSU is on the rise, but they're not going to contend for that top 4 spot. I think that Mississippi State is losing Tolu Smith, and that's going to be huge for them. There are different players in this conference that are taking steps back. Kentucky can take a step forward here. I think it's a reasonable expectation to say that they should be in contention and they should be winning in the postseason. Because if that's what it's about, and that's what Cal expects to happen, I expect it to happen as well. Just some different things that could happen that would satisfy the fan base here, by the way. So contending for the SEC regular season title, going for a double bye in the SEC tournament, going to the SEC tournament game. Don't take a dip in SEC play against an extremely weak opponent. I wrote down this bullet point because I think it's very important. I don't think that there needs to be a lull here where Kentucky goes 1-2 over a stretch of 3 games where they really struggle and they lose to 2 really weak opponents, because it's less about losing to those weak opponents. Oh, whatever, it happens. It's more about what they're doing in the NCAA tournament and it's how it affects their seeding. I understand that Coach Cal talks about the importance of March and doing X, Y, and Z in March to get ready for your seeding. You need to be doing those things early on in conference play, and quite frankly, you need to be doing them in non-conference play. So don't screw up in the SEC where you don't need to screw up. I know it's very difficult to win on the road, but I think that if you are going to set this expectation, you should win. You should go out and win more often than not. I think Kentucky needs to be borderline dominant. If we're going to get back to it, I think that this is the year to do it. If Coach Cal says, hey, we're going to make these changes and this is my expectation to get back to how things were, okay, then do it. That's what I expect to happen. I expect Kentucky to be pretty dominant. I think that Kentucky, on top of this, needs to get a win or wins in non-conference play just to take advantage of quad one opportunities. And you may say, well, what are some of those opportunities? Well, Kentucky's going to play Duke, I believe, to begin the season. They're also going to play Indiana. They're going to play Gonzaga. If I'm not mistaken, they're going to play somebody in the CBS Sports Classic, so Ohio State, UCLA, or North Carolina, probably. They're going to play Louisville, who I would expect to be better as well. You're going to see a random team thrown in there like Michigan or something to that effect that Kentucky is going to play. You're going to have several solid resume-boosting opportunities, 4 or 5 of them being maybe quad one. Take advantage of it. Don't do what you've done for the past 3 straight seasons and leave little blips where you could have won the game, leave things to be desired out in the court. Take advantage and win those games. It's going to help you when you get to the NCAA tournament. And then talking about the NCAA tournament, I think this is as straightforward as it can get. Elite Eight minimum. Elite Eight minimum. You should not get upset in the first round. You should not get upset in the second round. You should beat whoever you meet in the Sweet 16, and you should make it to the Elite Eight. That is where I'm sitting. That bullet point right there is probably the most important one to me. These other things, I think, cannot really matter that much. But if the goal here is to win in the postseason and do all these different things to make that happen, the Elite Eight is where I draw the line. If you don't make it to the Elite Eight, Cal should be gone. Full stop. So let me know what you think. If Cal comes back, what does he need to do to satisfy you in this fan base? You can leave that in the comments below or on the socials at Locked On UK on Twitter. All right, so we've got an early offseason roster tracker here to take a look at. I'm going to discuss the players coming in, the players that are definitely gone, and then the players that could return or have a decision pending. It's a lot of different guys here that we can hypothesize and project over. A very interesting list, and if a couple of them come back, it could dramatically change Kentucky's outlook next season. Before we dive into it, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at Nissan. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The NC State Wolfpack are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. This team absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in their first two games in the tournament. Wins over Texas Tech and Oakland have set them up to play Marquette in the Sweet 16. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Wolfpack have done here. You can take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. You can shop all of those SUVs over at NissanUSA.com. Again, that is NissanUSA.com. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of the show. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I want to take a look at this roster tracker for you here, guys. Just kind of talk about the players that are definitely gone, the players that are coming in, and the players that could be returning for the Wildcats. Let's start here with what is coming in for Kentucky basketball. It's the number 2 rated class in the 2024 recruiting cycle. Got 4 different 5-star guys according to the 24/7 Sports composite rankings, 2 4-stars. Starting here at the top, 5-star center Jaden Quaintance, who has reclassified to the 2024 class, going to be 17, if I'm not mistaken, getting here on campus. Has to be here for a minimum of 2 seasons, has to be in college for a minimum of 2 seasons before he can declare for the NBA draft. So Quaintance coming in. Lengthy frame, really impressive prospect, aggressive around the rim, 5-star combo guard, Boogie Flan joining him as well. Excellent shooter, really fun guy, could play the point or the shooting guard role. I think he's going to be there alongside 5-star shooting guard Billy Richmond, who is also just a very athletic prospect. That should be a lot of fun alongside Quaintance. And then Carter Knox, 5-star shooting guard, small forward Carter Knox. This recruit intrigues me. He's a shooter. He's got a well-organized game. He plays solid defense. This is probably my most interesting prospect on the team heading into next season. 4 stars here. Somto Cyril, the center there, I believe, of OTE. Big, physical, dominant rim protector during his time in high school. Likes to talk the talk and walk the walk. 4-star point guard Travis Perry here out of Kentucky. Played a phenomenal game here during his tournament for his high school. If I'm not mistaken, winning the tournament there at the very end. Didn't have a couple of good games there, but towards the end, he really did turn it up. Travis Perry, I believe the all-time leading scorer in Kentucky high school basketball history. Just a really smart player. Really good shooter. Can light it up, can distribute. He's just a smart kid that would be able to operate, I think, this machine pretty well if given time to. Definitely gone. So we talked about the players coming in. Let's talk about the players definitely gone. Biggest hit to the team, obviously, is Antonio Reeves, the leading scorer, gave us everything that he had to Kentucky this season. Just a phenomenal year. Excellent shooter, excellent player at the rim. I think that he is going to be sorely missed, as will Trey Mitchell, who is officially gone this season as well. Versatile forward for the Wildcats, who really struggled during his injury, but was able to play really well against Oakland. Brendan Canada also gone as well. Canada, you will be missed. So we've talked about the players coming in, the players gone. And here's the massive list of players that could return or have yet to make a decision. And I will give you my thoughts here on these players as we go through. Reed Sheppard is yet to make a decision. Some people expect him to come back. Some people expect him to go. Here's my 2 cents on it. If he's a projected top 10 pick, I don't see why on earth he would come back unless he just wants to run it back and have more success in the postseason. There's literally no reason to come back. Outside of that, I think Sheppard's gone. Rob Dillingham, I think, is also gone. DJ Wagner, I think, also is gone. I think he's going to declare for the draft or enter the transfer portal if he does return next season. Would be interested to see what his role looks like with these freshmen. I can go ahead and tell you, some of you are not going to like the rotations next season. If DJ Wagner is involved, some of you will be against it. Some of you, or against him starting. Some of you will be against him sitting on the bench. It's going to make for some really fun conversation. If Wagner comes back, I think he could definitely use the development. I think he could get some good development here. Joey Hart, I think, is going to be back. I would not expect him to enter the transfer portal. Justin Edwards, I think, is gone. Adu Thiero, I think, is returning. Jordan Burks, I think, is also back. Aaron Bradshaw, I think, is also back or enters the transfer portal. Ugonna Onyenso, I also think, is either going to enter the transfer portal or return. I don't think either of those guys are going to be declaring for the draft. And then Zvonimir Ivisic, I have absolutely no idea. I don't know if he's going to go to the draft. I don't know if he's going to enter the portal. I don't know if he's going to return. I have no clue what Big Z is going to do with this team next season, if he even is here. So that gives you this current roster for next year. At guard, Boogie Flan, Travis Perry, Billy Richmond, with the possibility of Sheppard, Wagner, and Hart. At the small forward position, you've pretty much got Carter Knox, and that's about it. At forward, Adu Thiero and Jordan Burks, and then at center/forward, you go. Jaden Quaintance, Somto, Aaron Bradshaw, Zvonimir Ivisic. 2 of those guys definitely are going to have to bounce. Either somebody's going to decommit, somebody's going to transfer, or somebody's going to declare that we don't expect to. You cannot have 5 centers on the roster. I know Cal may like that. He's not going to do that. At least I would not believe that he would do that. So that's the current state of the roster for Kentucky basketball. Will be fascinating to watch the updates here. If Sheppard returns somehow, if one of the other guards does, if Adu Thiero makes an interesting decision, we'll talk about it here on Locked On Kentucky. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On UK. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDaw_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.